Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this Tuesday morning, very blustery, windy Tuesday morning. About that, I drive my wife into work every morning, and she works up at the University of Utah Hospital. And oh my gosh, the winds up north are insane. And yeah, trees and power lines are coming down all over the place. So, if this bad boy kicks out at no time with no warning, well, I apologize. That's what it is. Let me make sure that everyone can see and hear me all right. I see that Mario is with us, Jaime is with us, so let me know if you can see and hear me all right. And if you can, then we'll go ahead and jump into things. And in the meantime, don't park your car under any trees. I've learned that lesson. Oh, yeah, can be bad. So let's see if you can see and hear me all right. Okay, fantastic. Timothy gives us a thumbs up, see and hear. So we're all set. Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. All right. Hey, Hayden, good to see ya. All right, so this is what we're going to do. Today we're talking about business transactions. Let's see. Yeah, crazy wins, right? Now, yes, the reading that you guys did is about a lot more than business transactions, but ultimately it comes down to a question of what is a business transaction and how does it work? Now, I promise you, it's a lot more interesting than you might think. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to go ahead and come over here, and that way we can pull this up. So let's kick things off, and I'm going to ask you in the comments section, you tell me what you think constitutes a business transaction. And then we'll go ahead and start playing with those. So let's see what we come up with. Okay, let's come back and take a look at this. So, by the way, we had 5 people comment. Fantastic. So we have 5 contributors. Let's get that bad boy up to 5. And I see at least, let's see. All right, I see 3 great comments along with some agreements. So I'm going to throw in an extra one for some agreements there because a lot of you were saying, yeah, that comment up there. So and what's really interesting, ooh, we have another one. Fantastic. What I find really fascinating about this is you'll notice in the comments that the definition begins to evolve. And that is really cool, guys. That means that you're all kind of reading the comments, thinking about them, and letting your definition evolve as you think about it. So let's start at the top, right? So Timothy said, any exchange of goods or services. Yes. Okay. At its most basic, that is a transaction, a business transaction. It's a transaction, right? Any exchange of goods and services is a transaction. Clifford then went on, Danielle agreed, and then Aaron said, agree with Timothy, an exchange of goods or services for something else of value. Okay, now this is good. They're all good. But I remember I said we've got kind of this evolution of a definition. An exchange that creates value, okay? And a business transaction creates additional value, a value add. We're going to talk about that. Jared was all thumbs up on that. Mario, yes, agreed. It can be between two or more parties. Absolutely. So it is a relationship thing. It's two or more people. Ryan said, trading goods, money, or services for other goods, money, or services. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Now, it's interesting. None of you said, and by the way, I'm glad, that money is necessarily an absolute aspect of a business transaction. In point of fact, money is not a requirement. Ryan said, yeah, okay, money or goods or services, it can be an aspect, but it's not required. So let me tell you a story. You're wondering why I've got this egg up here, right? Okay, so we live right next door to a fantastic family, and we first moved in, and all our kids were itty bitty and so forth. They're all your age now. They're all college students and so forth. But every once in a while, and it was actually fairly frequently, we'd get this little knock at the door, and their Isabella, would say, hey, can we borrow an egg? Little girl that big, can we borrow an egg? Sure, absolutely. So we'd hand her an egg and she'd go on her merry way. Well, inevitably, like a day or two later, they would return with an egg. Here's your egg. And I thought that was kind of funny because, when you say, can we borrow an egg? In my mind, it's really pretty much, hey, can I have an egg? Because we don't keep track of this nonsense, right? And I would, Jeremy, I'll grab you here in a moment. So we would take the egg back and say thank you and so forth. And this would happen over and over. Can we borrow an egg? Yes, here's an egg. And then, hey, here's your egg back. All right, so, and I'm going to hold off on the second part of this story, okay? Well, the question is borrowing an egg and then returning it a business transaction between neighbors? I maintain that not only is it a business transaction, it's actually a much more sophisticated business transaction than one might think right off. So let me explain. Well, what's in it for our neighbors? Her name is Sherilyn, the mother of Isabella. Sherilyn, what's in it for Sherilyn? Well, she gets quite a few things by just borrowing this egg. First of all, she gets just-in-time inventory, which means she can get the exact amount of inventory she needs at the moment she needs it. Now, why is this sophisticated? Well, it means that she has a reduced need for storage space. Now, granted, it's not like eggs take up a lot of space in your refrigerator, but that is a finite amount of space, and eggs do, in point of fact, take up space in a refrigerator. And so, by having just-in-time inventory with her neighbor, she can free up space in her refrigerator. Now, Okay, let's face it, eggs not a lot. But now if you extrapolate this out to a big multinational corporation, just-in-time inventory all of a sudden means a lot of value. Furthermore, she gets reduced investment cost. Now, what I mean by this is when you buy something and put it in your refrigerator, you have essentially converted money into product that you put in your refrigerator, and you do not get the value out of that product until you eat it. And in some cases, you don't even eat it. You end up throwing it away, right? Because it goes bad, you didn't use it properly, so on and so forth, right? So what this means is that she does not have to take her money and invest it in product and kind of glue it into that product and have it sitting in her finite space. She can now get what she needs with limited to no cost to her. Now, once again, for somebody next door, that's a relatively small value. But if you put this with a great big huge corporation, this is huge value. Okay, so she is gaining a great deal of value from this transaction. Okay, now what about me? What value am I getting? I'm actually getting value out of the transaction as well. First of all, I get goodwill. Now, when it comes to neighbors, it's really important to have a good relationship with your neighbors. It just makes your life a lot easier. And so I have that goodwill. I'm the awesome neighbor who you can always count on for an egg when you find out that you're short on your recipe. And furthermore, she doesn't then have to run off to the store and get a whole bunch. She can get it right away. We already talked about that. I get more or less a guarantee of reciprocation, which means I'm pretty much certain that if ever I need to borrow something or if I need some help on it, I know I can go over there and I can ask to borrow something or I can ask for help on some sort of project because I have built up this bank of goodwill. And that bank of goodwill has significant value. But now here's the second part of the story that I didn't share with you. Now, she's borrowing an egg once every couple weeks or so, right? Well, every month or two, I get a little knock at the door, and there's Bella with a plate of cookies. And she says, "We just wanted to say thank you for letting us borrow so many eggs." That is an interest payment. Because in the world of capitalism and finance, which we're going to go into depth on in these lectures, this capital is what we use to create wealth. And so when I give capital, my eggs, to Cheryl Lynn, I lose the ability to use those eggs myself, which means if you just gave me an egg a few days later, you're giving me the egg, but you're not giving me the opportunity cost that I divested myself of. You're not giving me, what I could have done with that egg had I hung on to it. Now, again, with an egg, it's not a big deal. But if we're talking $100,000, well, if I let somebody borrow $100,000 for a month, and they return the $100,000, I lose out on what I could have done with that $100,000 myself. And so the plate of cookies is an interest payment. It's saying we recognize that you've, lost the ability to use these eggs, and so here it is as a thank you. I maintain that even something as simple as neighbors borrowing eggs can be a very sophisticated business transaction because it meets all of your definitions. It's an exchange of goods or services. In this case, it's an exchange of goods and services because I'm providing the eggs as a service, right? And it's between two or more people, and it does create additional value. Now let's come over here. So Jeremy said, or when the government has the right to, right hand over the left. Yeah, maybe so. And then we have Timothy, you also get a fresher egg in return. I hadn't thought about that. That's not a bad thought. Oh, hold on. I'm hitting the wrong buttons. Here we go. Okay. Jeremy, Amazon has more than 75% of its products sold that are not kept at their facility. The items are located at authorized seller locations. It saves space and costs. So that is a great real world example, right? And Joseph, you're in on it as well. Fantastic. Now, let's talk about that consignment with Amazon. Amazon doesn't own hardly anything. All they do is have it in fulfillment centers. By the way, Walmart, this is called, in many ways, a consignment model. Walmart does not own anything on their shelves. When you walk into a Walmart and you see a whole bunch of stuff, Walmart doesn't own that. The people who produce that and the distributors and so forth and the middlemen, they own it. They don't get paid for it until it is sold. So the moment you buy it and you hand your money over to Walmart, Walmart takes the producer's cut and hands it over to the producers. It's sold on consignment. So, yeah, we're going to see this sort of thing an awful lot. Okay? Very good. Great discussion. We're going to keep it going. All right. So, now, one of the things that the reading talks about, and it goes into the Sumerians and the nomads, and it could be really tempting to think why are we talking about Sumerians and nomads? Well, here's the thing. Just as in my exchange with my neighbor is a sophisticated business transaction that involved zero money, the Sumerians and nomads, in fact, had an infinitely more sophisticated business network set up, which once again involved zero money. It was all done in barter, which we're going to talk about in depth here. And I just saw your comment there, Aaron. Yeah, kind of funky about Walmart, huh? Okay, so let's talk about Samaria. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. These folks are stationary, okay? They built this really awesome, cool civilization, and they're utterly stationary. No money. They don't have any need for money. They would get everything they needed through trade, okay? Trade and barter. We're going to talk about this. But here's the thing. Since they're stationary, they are really focused on producing goods that you can produce when you're stationary. It says in the readings things like textiles and pottery, made many desirable things, right? Well, here's the thing. Textiles, pottery, they require a facility, right? I mean, you've got to have all the sheep and so forth to get the wool. You need to have the textile mills, if you will. You need to have the pottery. You need to have dirt. You got to have mud, baby. You got to have lots of mud to make the pottery. And so you got to be stationary for that because you're mining all the mud, gathering, I don't know. And then you got kilns. You can't just move kilns around. Kilns are really, really, really stationary, right? So Sumerians are focusing on production, all right? So on the other hand, we have the nomadic peoples, okay? They're mobile, all right? They're loading up camels and so on and so forth, and they're mobile. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they have to develop relationships with all the people along their nomadic trails, their paths, right? Because they need to be able to graze their animals, they need water rights and so forth. So they need to build relationships with all these peoples that they interact with. Furthermore, since they're nomadic, they're moving about, they are a distribution channel. So while the Sumerians are production, the nomads are distribution. So as the reading says here, They would bring precious stones and things of metal and leather. They would get in exchange for pottery and beads and glass, garments such as manufactured things. Now, think about this. If I am a Sumerian, I make pots after pots after pots after pots. I make a ton of pots. I only need so many pots, okay? Which means that at a certain point, producing more pots no longer creates value for me. On the other hand, the nomads, they're kind of like, we could really use those pots. Why? Well, you could fill those pots with feed and grain and water, so you could increase the distance that your camels can travel. You can actually increase your distribution routes. And of course, you can then trade these things for where people don't have pots because they don't have the right mud and they don't have the kilns and so forth. In exchange, they can get glass because they go out to the ocean and so forth and they can get glass. They can bring that glass back to the Sumerians, who then can make glaze with it for their pots and jewelry and so forth. So here's the thing. Something can have relatively little value to one person and great value to somebody else. Furthermore, one group can have a surplus of an item, such as pottery, and another group can have a deficit. They can lack this item, okay? So the whole idea of trade is, all right, I give of my surplus, which does not have a lot of value to me, to you because you lack these things and it has more value to you. You, on the other hand, you have all these saddles full of glass. What do you need glass for? You're a freaking nomad. You don't need glass. Nomads are like, dang straight, we don't need glass, but we have a surplus of it. You Sumerians, you don't have much of it. We're going to trade, okay? So these folks actually really created a very, very sophisticated production, distribution, trade network this way. And notice, nobody's using money. There's no money, okay? They're doing it all through barter. Now, you know what barter is, right? Okay, I give you something, you give me something. It's tradesies. Up for trades. I don't know if you did that as a kid and so forth. You'd put things up for trades. You would, trade. Here's the thing, though. I often like to ask, do you still barter? Now, here's the thing is, whenever I ask, do you barter, occasionally I'll get something like, hey, you know what? Well, you know what? I went on to KSL and somebody had this video game that I really wanted. I have a video game that they really wanted, so we traded. That is legitimate, straight up bartering. You can also do it in terms of household chores and so forth. Hey, back when you were a kid, right, you'd ask, Dad, can I borrow the car? And your father would say, well, I'll tell you what, you mow the lawn first, then you can borrow the car. Straight up bartering, all right? Rain said, I would much rather get fed meals everywhere I go in turn for my work versus having to exchange money. I love the idea of trade and barter. Yes, absolutely. And here we go. We got that one right here. Timothy, think about that system in the context of the playground. When we were kids, we would always, there's always that cool thing that everybody wanted, and you would trade and play with it and so forth a little bit. Absolutely. Awesome, awesome comment. We're now at 10, okay? You know what that means, folks. That means that later on, you're going to send me an email that says 850, yes, 854.10, 854.10. 854.10 is going to get you some extra credit. So keep it coming because I'm going to add more as we go along, right? Great, great work. Now, here's the thing about bartering, though, guys. Barter is a much bigger part of your life right now than I think we may realize. Okay. Let me show you what I mean. We exchange personal data for services every day of our lives. Okay. So for example, Google search is free, Google Docs are free, Google Maps is free, Google this, Google that, Google everything else, meeting spaces, so on and so forth, free. Not really. You have exchanged personal data for it. Facebook, free. No, not really. Now you might say, well, they do advertising. Well, it's because they can really, really, really target their advertising because we have bartered our personal information for these services. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you can hear him, but we have a freaking new puppy over in the other room barking away. We got this puppy last night, and my wife and I went to the pet store and we bought a whole bunch of new puppy gear. I mean, we're talking $200 of puppy gear. This morning, not 12 hours later, my Instagram feed is swimming with puppy supply ads, okay? So I exchanged my personal information with Petco, who then provided it to a data data this, data that, and who then sold it off to, Instagram, which is Facebook and Google and so forth. So we get a lot of free services that are not free. We have bartered our personal information. This is the influence economy, and personal information is very, very valuable. We also barter content. We provide content in exchange for content. So, rate my professors. You guys, I don't know, maybe you can chime in if you've ever done a Rate My Professor rating. You guys provide the content that they then sell. Okay, yes, it's free, but they monetize it through advertising. Same thing goes with Yelp. Same thing goes with TripAdvisor. All these things are being crowdsourced. All their content, all their product is supplied for free by you, which they then sell through advertisement and so forth. This is barter. This is barter on your part. So we had a few great comments. So Rain, yeah, exactly. Mario brought up a good point. Yes, in Mexico, it must have always feed your workers, even when you're paying for their services. That is a great real world example. And I think I'm just going to assume that that is a new contributor. I've lost count on the contributors, but I'm pretty darn sure we've had 10. And then let's see, we've got starting up a paperclip trading company to get a car. I've heard of that one. Let's see, Timothy, TikTok is paying contributors now. I did not know that. Jaime, trading players in, I like it, Jaime. Trading players in Major League, great world example. Oh, that is really good. Yeah, swap players and so forth. Yeah, what did you trade for the, so Ryan, I traded my peace of mind. Oh my gosh. See, here's the thing, people. So it's my son's dog, right? But my son goes off to work each day and my wife goes off to work each day. So who's here all day long training the puppy? Yours truly, right? Oh my gosh. Okay, so Jeremy, gaming systems are all about, yeah, you buy the gaming system. If you want to use the game, you have to pay monthly fees and so forth. Yes, very good. Great example. Yeah, Mari, I'll tell you what. Okay, so barter, baby, it's a big part of your life. Now, I'll even go so far as to say that the first 15, 16 years of your life, you lived your entire life on barter. You didn't pay for anything. It's all barter. Okay, let's keep going. So here's the thing. If we're bartering, what's profit? Now, we have alluded to what profit is, okay? But once again, let's play with this idea. Let's put out in the comments what you think your definition. And by the way, you're right, right? This is not one of those questions in this class. I don't ask questions that are right or wrong. I ask questions to get us thinking about it, right? So, what's profit? Tell me what you think. All right, let's come back. And by the way, guys, you're sharp, okay? I'm not just saying this, right, because I want to rate my professor rating. I really don't. You're hitting some really, really, really good points. I want to show you, okay? So, first of all, I know that we're definitely a 10 because we've got Vanessa with us now. All right, so, here's, Timothy, more value than the cost of what you gave. Yes, totally. Right. Once again, though, you're building on your definitions, right? It's really cool. Jeremy, when you increase the value over your cost, right? Absolutely. Profit would be the increase of value of the transaction. Now we're getting a little thing, right? Because now the transaction itself creates value. Any surplus you get out of a trade, right? That's an interesting thought, Jason, and welcome. So, surplus from the trade. I kind of like that because if trade creates surplus, then you get additional value. And I agree with this, and I think it's going to come up especially when we start talking about capital and the use of capital. So I'm totally with you. Then I threw a little lob out there. I said, does it have to involve money, right? And you guys were totally all over it. They were like, no, it doesn't have to involve money at all. I like what Daniel said is bartering, it would be subjective to each person, a lot easier to measure with money. I like that a lot because, well, he brings up two really, really, really good points. One is value is completely subjective, utterly subjective. What is completely valuable to one person would be like valueless to somebody else. So very objective. Now the thing with money is it makes it really easy to measure, and this is one of the problems with money, and we're going to talk about money in depth in these lectures. Here's the thing with money is, let's take value for a moment. You have value as a person. I mean, you have a lot of value as a person. You have a value as offspring, as a sibling, as a friend, as an employee, as a human being, as an artist, as a creator, as a thinker. You have a lot of value. Well, how do you measure that? How do you measure your value as a friend? How do you measure your value as a sibling? Yeah, I don't know. And so we attach money to it. And therefore, oftentimes when we think of value, we're just thinking about how much do you earn, which is not a good measure of value. Okay, we're going to talk about that. How much you earn is not a good measure of your value as a person. But it's just so stinking easy to measure, right? Yeah, totally. Okay, let's keep going here. You know, the ending product or service, exchange of goods or services without using money. Nice. Value can be anything. Profit is when you potty train the puppy and you have a cleaner house. Yeah, that's the profit I get from all the work. You're absolutely right. Yes, very good. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Aaron, bang on. Some value is difficult to quantify, easier to qualify. Yes, absolutely right. So you guys get it, all right? You guys absolutely get it. I'm impressed. And by the way, we got a new real world. Oh no, not that one. We have a new real world example from the frickin' puppy. Oh my gosh. I didn't want the puppy. But there's a problem. I love my wife and I love my son, so I'm screwed. I got a puppy. Okay, let's keep going. All right. Now here's the thing though. All right. The really let's think about me and Cheryl Lynn when we're trading eggs and cookies and goodwill and stuff like that, right? That is very, very, very relationship based. Okay. So I can go next door and borrow an egg. However, if I go 2 blocks away and try to borrow an egg, they're going to look at me from a house that I don't know. They're going to look at me like, that's a little weird. It's really interesting. It's all about relationship, right? Because I have a relationship with Josh and Sherilyn Becerra, our neighbors, we can borrow eggs. But if I just go a few houses away where I don't know anyone, where I don't know the people there, and I ask to borrow an egg, I'll be lucky if they open the door, right? It's very relationship based. Well, that's wonderful when we're just doing business with people with whom we have a direct relationship. But that ain't many people, right? If we really want, you can get a credit card for the testing that theory. Yeah, right? And we're going to talk about that actually in like 2 lectures, Timothy, so hang with me. Yeah, Hayden, it is about all who you know, right? Which is why network power is really important. But I digress. So here's the thing. We want to be able to do business with people with whom we do not have a regular relationship, okay? Well, here's the problem. If you don't have a relationship with somebody, you don't have that trust. You know, these business transactions are built very much on trust, a relationship-based trust. And if you don't have that trust, you're not going to go into a business relationship with somebody. So that's why we have laws, rules, and regulations, because they set the playing field and the rules of the game for everybody playing the game. So that's why the reading talks about the Code of Hammurabi. I think that's how it's pronounced, the Code of Hammurabi. I'm going to read a couple of quotes from the readings, but then we're going to bring it all back into this whole business transaction discussion. It was consolidated by a great king called Hammurabi. You could have guessed that. Circa, holy cow, 2000 BC. who made the earliest code of laws yet known to history. The codes gave laws regarding trade, prices, slavery. We're going to come back to that one. The duties of workers, theft, fraud, receipts of sale, and liability. This is all stuff, for the most part, that laws deal with today when it comes to business transactions. Now, we're going to come back to slavery here in a moment, but we have laws, rules, and regulations regarding trade, prices, duties of workers, theft, fraud, receipt of sales, liability. And so what these codes and laws do is they put in place in lieu of a relationship, they put in place common agreements that everybody agrees to abide by. And if you don't abide by it, you actually get your butt kicked. That's one of the things the reading doesn't talk about. The Code of Hammurabi had some really draconian, and it's actually the root of the word draconian, some really draconian, punishments if you did not follow the rules. Because the idea is, if everybody follows the rules, then we can trade freely and, not be stiffing each other, right? Jeremy, in my communications class last fall, check it out, see what he did there? We discussed the relationship between friendship versus a prospective client. That is freaking interesting. On the friendship side, you can have easy exchange of communication, but with a new person, you have to build that connection. Yeah, right. When you walk into a car dealership and they say, "Hey, how you doing?" You're like, "I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer that question. I don't have a relationship with you. I totally know what you're in this for." Standoffish, right? Jeremy, this is the connection develops to trust. And in business, this is a loyal customer. Yes, right. I believe that there's a lot of products and services out there with whom people have a relationship that they would call friendship. I think many Apple customers would consider Apple a friend. I think a lot of people who ride Harley Davidson would consider Harley Davidson to be that kind of close relationship, right? Totally with you. Great real world example. Hang on, I get my buttons mixed up here. I'm going to give you a double on that for reference to past lectures because you explained it so well. Excellent, excellent job. So the Code of Hammurabi is important for the reasons that we just talked about and that Jeremy just pointed out. It is, in lieu of a relationship, establishes guidelines. So we're going to play with that idea a whole lot going forward. Now, let's talk about labor. Okay, I told you we'd talk about slavery. Now, this is something we are going to build out significantly in future lectures. Okay, so all I'm doing is kind of throwing a hand grenade over the fence, and then we're not going to go into detail, but we will go into detail later. The reason I want to bring this up is, first of all, the Code of Hammurabi dealt with slavery. Well, why didn't it say things like workers' wages and so forth? Well, here's the thing. Back in the day, slavery was the work economy. We're going to talk about this in depth, and we're going to talk about why it changed and so forth. But just to give you some examples, in Rome, between 5 and 8 million slaves worked in the Roman Empire. Okay, so that's a lot. Greece, the total population of slaves in Greece was around 250,000, which would give us a slave to free ratio of 2 to 5. I got news for you people. The Greeks did not work. They didn't work. This is why they're all just standing around in robes talking at the forum about, democracy and philosophy and whether or not your humors are balanced, right? Because they had this huge slave labor. Now, with that in mind, though, let's check this out. The slave system had spread to most industries and every sort of work that could be done by gangs, mines, mineralogy, meteorology, something like that. Metallurgy. There's the word metallurgy. Metallurgical operations, the rowing of galleys, road making, big building operations were largely slave occupation, and nearly all domestic work was. Okay, but there were poor free men, meaning people who were not slaves but were poor. And then there were freed men in the cities, on the countryside, and so forth, working for themselves, even working for wages. Working for wages was not a common practice at the time. We're going to talk more about this and why that was the case in the future, but I just want to toss this out there. Working for wages was very rare because I got slaves. Why would I pay somebody to do something when I live in this slave system, right? They were artisans, supervisors, and so forth, workers of a new money paid class working in competition with slave labor. Think about that. Working in competition with slave labor. How does one compete with slave labor? Now, you know the answer. You know the answer to this, but at the time they didn't. Okay? And so remember, this is a class on the evolution of business thought. We are going to see where they started to come up with this idea that you should actually pay someone to work for you. And in fact, if you pay them to work for you, you will get better labor, better quality, better service than if you don't pay them. I know, to you and I, this is like, duh, hey, George, I totally get it. To them, this was a radical idea that hadn't even really taken root yet. Okay? So Ryan said, I would love to see more of today's politician pushing shovels, etc. Yeah, showing that they can actually work. Oh my gosh, Ryan, do I have a story for you later on? Holy smoke. Different lecture, but you're dead on right. Jeremy, SLCC is canceling classes on campus. Oh, really? Due to the wind, the library, airport? Yeah, guys, like I say, I think we're going to make it through this lecture okay without losing power. But holy smoke, when I was driving, oh, it was insane. So canceling classes. Stay safe, seriously. Wind is exciting, it's interesting, it's fascinating, but trust me, it's dangerous as all get out. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so just give some thought, because later we're going to talk about it. Not today, but a future lecture. How would you as an independent laborer compete with slaves? All right? Now, luckily, there's a really good answer, which is why we don't do this anymore. That, and it's grossly immoral, just as an aside. Okay, there you go, folks. You're in great shape, okay? That wraps up this particular lecture. So if you are just joining in from a different class, or just to kind of see what this is all about, then you're totally set. We are done with the lecture. You can drop off. However, if you're with my class, I invite you to stick around for a moment, because we'll talk about the next reading, and I'll kind of give you a heads up on what to look for there. So with that, I'm going to come over here to the monitor. I'll reduce this down, and let me bring up Canvas. I apologize. I should have had Canvas up already. But that's all right. We'll do it here. Okay, we'll come over here to Canvas, and it's actually been a day or two, so my guess is that it's going to say, hey, show me that you really are who you are. Yes, yes, yes. Let's see if it'll let me in. All right, it lets me in. All right, so let's take it. There we go. Let's come over to our class here. All right. And we're going to pull up, all right, we're on module 2, okay, which means if we come over here to the modules, what we just went over was short history of the ancient world, okay? So let's talk about what you're going to look at when it comes to Greek and Roman business. So I'm going to open up this because this is our lecture for Thursday. Let's take a look at this. Now, you have a fair amount, okay? Yes, read this section here on the fable of Gyges maybe. I don't know the exact pronunciation of that. And the man who invented money, okay? So definitely read this section right here. You want to read this section, the Greek view of money. You absolutely want to read that, right? Read about Roman slavery, Roman private property. And okay, let's see. I'm going to find the right ones. Here we go. You want to read this section here. The Fall of Rome according to Edward Gibbon. Okay, you want to read that section here. Can I find this book? Yeah, we're going to read a section. This is a section from Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. That's what this section is all about. We're going to go into depth on this one. See, it's actually a real bookshelf back there. And, okay, all this, right? All that, including this. All the stuff on Gibbon, folks. Yes, all of this. The third cause and the fourth cause. All right. And the legacy. And you're good. Okay. So read those sections and you will be perfectly set up for the lecture on Thursday. Okay. And with that, everyone, I'll stick around for a moment to see if there are any questions or anything. You definitely want to send me that email because today we got 2 10s. So I'm going to throw in a little extra, and I meant to do that last time as well. So I'll throw in a little extra. Great discussion today. I mean it. Seriously. I understand that this is more challenging. I totally get it. I'm not a moron. This is challenging to do this online. But you folks are really stepping it up. I'm impressed. So thank you very much. That is extra credit that I will gladly hand over. So like I said, I'm going to stick around on the comments section. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you on Thursday. Have a good one.